में, एकेडमिक रिसर्च में, हर जगह में ये हम देखते हैं कि जो इश्यूज क्लास में फेस किए जाते हैं वो वहां पर भी दोबारा बार बार आते हैं। तो वो कैसे इश्यूज हैं? एक ये जो एक मेन स्ट्रीम है जिससे हमें एक्सक्लूड किया जाता है, इस मेन स्ट्रीम में हमारे जो बच्चे जहाँ एक्सक्लूजन फेस करते हैं, जहाँ स्ट्रगल करते हैं, इस मेन स्ट्रीम के अपने क्या क्या इश्यूज हैं, कैसे इसके साथ चैलेंज किया जा सकता है, इसके एक्सपीरियंसेस क्या क्या हैं, और क्या इसमें कोई सॉल्यूशंस भी हैं, क्या हम कैसे नेगोशिएट करें। बिकॉज हमारे ऑडियंस जो है बहुत यंग स्कॉलर्स है और वो बहुत कीनली इस चीज को सुन रहे हैं, तो उनके लिए थोड़ा एक इस पूरी चीज के ऊपर एक थ्योराइज करने के लिए, इसके ऊपर डिस्कशन करने के लिए आ रहा है हमारा अगला पैनल, जिसमें हमारे पास बहुत बड़े बड़े स्पीकर्स, इंटरेस्टिंग स्पीकर्स जो अपना एक बहुत ही वेल्थ ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस लेके आ रहे हैं। हमारे पास शिरीन आजम है, हमारे पास सिद्धेश गौतम है, राहुल सोनपिंपले जो थोड़ी देर में जुड़ेंगे, और नितिन डोनाल्ड है। इस पैनल की ज्यादा वक्त ना लेते हुए आई हैंड ओवर द reins of this panel to Nitin. Nitin, please take over, and looking forward to a very stimulating discussion from all of your ends.
Thank you, Ravi. We have a very interesting panel, and as Ravi already mentioned, I think it will further. Yeah. Okay. So this panel will basically further the discussions that we have been, the issues that we have been discussing in the last panel and also yesterday. Let me quickly introduce the panelists. We have Rahul Sonpimple, who, as Ravi mentioned, will join in a short while. Rahul Sonpimple is a PhD candidate in sociology at JNU, New Delhi. His research focuses on the Dalit movements and post-Ambedkarite leadership of Dalit movements. He was an active member of BAPSA in JNU. He has completed his master's degree in Dalit and tribal social work at TIS, Mumbai. The next panelist is Shireen Azam. Shireen Azam. Shireen Azam is a DPhil researcher at the University of Oxford, where she works on the invisibilization of caste among Muslims. She was previously assistant editor at the journal Economic and Political Weekly, where she also founded the platform EPW Engage. She currently co-runs India Inc., which creates explainer videos based on academic research. The third panelist is Siddhesh Gautam. He is a multidiscipline, mixed media artist, designer, treasure hunter, fallen angel, and soul searcher. His work is a personification of his personal spiritual journey. Minimalism and postmodernist thought are his major influences, and his work is based on in-depth research on the subject. He aims to create much more than a superficially beautiful object, which I'm sure those who have seen his work would agree to. His work is meant to challenge one's perceptions, expand our minds, honor the sacred, and evoke feelings of adventure, exploration, and deep spiritual connection. So without any further delay, let me ask Shireen to share her thoughts on the topic, navigating mainstream academia and cultural spaces. Thank you. And Shireen, you have 12 to 15 minutes. Yeah, I will remind you after 12 minutes.
Okay, just a second, Nitin. I think I'm hearing an echo. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Just sorry. Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to this very, very important conference. Thank you, Ravikant, for organizing this, and Anup sir, and Nitin, thanks for the introduction. I think I'll use this space to give a sense of my experience in elite or elitish universities. And it's important to add that I come from a part Pasmanda and part Ashraf location, so my narratives are influenced by that. I'll start by sharing a slightly ridiculous story about how I started off as in college. So I came to Bangalore from Ranchi for BA in a private university to study humanities. And we had very engaging teachers for English, literature, and critical theory. I was very drawn to them, and I intently listened to them. And as happens when you discuss literature, a lot about life and society is discussed, and it's a free flow of thoughts and ideas in the classroom. And a lot of discussions in class revolve around life, how to live life, the romance of life, beauty, love, materialism, capitalism. And I was not very articulate at this point. And I really looked up to some of my teachers and also my classmates who were very artsy, spoke about literature very well, had actual opinions, etc. And a big strand that emerged from the literature we were studying is how obscene it is to try and make your life about earning money and to work towards money. There was a constant aesthetification of poverty, of the beauty of having little, of the beauty of being natural, and not assuming roles, finding your true self. All these literature thoughts were abound. I took all of this a bit too seriously. So I started to see, through the eyes to see aesthetics and poverty in badly painted walls. And I tried to be very natural, which I thought meant that you should not buy too many clothes and you should not try to look good at all. I tried to hate the idea of earning money. I went around telling my family that I don't want money, I'll just live with whatever, like the least I can earn. And they were obviously shocked, but I'm 17 at this age, and you can call me innocent or stupid, but it took me really long to realize that the other people who are speaking so well in class are actually not doing any of this. I'm the only one, and I'm very charmed by this teacher because she wears these beautiful cotton saris and jewelry, and this whatever overall Fab India look, and by my confident classmates because they look so effortlessly good in their West Side kurtas and the way they carry themselves. And I had this latent dilemma for many months, and which I was not be able to articulate for very long, which was the simple sentence of, how do they look so good if they hate being rich? And how do these people love poverty but somehow have everything, all the fancy things? It's just surprising to me that it took me very, very long to even think of this as hypocrisy, because for many months I was just a bit confounded at how this works. So I think the biggest part of navigating elite academia spaces has been this realization, the vast difference between discourse and lived life. Because of the location, a lot of people who occupy these spaces who come from upper class families, and their choice of having taken arts as opposed to science or business is often what dictates their reference points of what privilege is. The good thing about people who are in corporate jobs is that they dream of being rich, and they very clearly say it, they work towards it. Humanities, academia, and elite spaces is some sort of a dreamland where very rich people get to feel very poor. So if that stage of being 18, if you asked me what academia is, because I had just come to learn media, and I'm just shown that the first time I'm learning what research is, or you can talk like this. And if you asked me what academia is, I would have said, it's something like you talk about very important issues, about people who suffer, but you are very comfortable yourself, and you come out of it looking very profound. And it's infectious. That is, I think, the mood of a lot of humanities education in India and elite spaces. And it is very seductive to be that person. And it's still very seductive for me to be that person. And the righteousness that runs in, I've been primarily in English departments and philosophy departments, and the righteousness is infectious. And the premise is that masses, the people don't understand what we are saying. And if only people were to think a little deeper to understand these complex, these nuanced thoughts that we are understanding in this class, everything in this country and this world would be great. And which is why I think when Ambedkarite students started coming into university spaces, and I've started calling out privilege of of people who inhabit these spaces, it rattles them so much, because I feel that the whole disciplinary mood, so to speak, is built on righteousness and victimhood in a lot of humanity spaces. And when you take that righteousness away, then you're dealing with very prickly questions of what purpose does your scholarship actually have. And it's also very easy to see that academic content is designed to never be read by the people it's written about, and this point has come up a lot of times. When jargon is not only about very difficult and complicated words, but it's just a flight of imagination where the author is able to coin a weird word for people's lives without them having any way to say this is bullshit. Like it's such a violent imagination, jargon of just making terms like whatever, Ashrafization, Sanskritization. These are two terms I was writing about this morning for another paper. So, which is why I don't know if anyone in this panel has come across this. I'll be very delighted to know, but I've never come across a piece of writing where an ethnographer goes back to the field and tells them what they found, and here people react on what they have written. I think that would be like a fascinating, kind of ethnography. But I am not aware of any, and it sounds so obvious to me to kind of engage with people you studied to ask them what they feel about these concepts. And I think a lot of cancellations and fallouts we see recently, from I think Nandini Krishnan's book on Invisible Men came out. It was about trans persons, and a lot of trans persons are very angry at how their gender is talked about. And her responses, if you read, were that, but I did everything right as per being an academic. This is what ethnography is. I felt this, I saw you and I felt this. And you see that a lot in a lot of defenses of academics who are being called out now. Saiba Verma, who was called out recently for her ethnography on Kashmir's, she interviewed people in Kashmir who were facing trauma after being victims of state violence. And it was later found out that her father is a raw, he was engaged with raw when she was doing her research, and she is engaged with raw still. And her reaction to this was that I did everything. I passed all ethics of academia in my college. I mean, I think these controversies are happening because some people from the communities you have always studied can suddenly read your work and rage about it at a public platform, and some other people can see it. And the second you think of academic writing with the clear idea that your subjects will read and understand what you write, it will become a very different endeavor. So yeah, I do think that if I did not buy into the myth that somehow being in academic spaces, and I say this with the assumption a lot of young people are hearing this, and from my experiences, I think if I did not buy into the myth that somehow being in academic spaces itself revolutionary, I would have tried harder to do what I do and not be more comfortable with engaging very little with critical engagement and with communities, as I've done in my career so far. And I also want to say a bit about articulation in marginalized spaces. And I think a lot of people who come into very elite places face the issue of people from privileged positions completely capturing classrooms with the way they speak. And I think it's important as students and teachers to train our minds to see that unhesitant, like superfluous speech is a function of lack of thought and not the opposite. So if somehow we as students, when we see some people being able to speak a lot very easily, we have to train our minds to think of that as actually a function of they are not thinking, or not that they are able to, think very well. Because I face this in several spaces I've been in, that the ease of speaking becomes kind of the modus operandi of what is considered the smart this thing in any space. I'll just quickly end with saying that another thing I've learned from being in mainstream academia is also not using that space to learn, but just to rise and do your learning outside of it. So I've started working on caste and Muslims actually very recently in the last 3-4 years. But I realized recently that my first assignment in my sociology of caste class in my second year BA was on caste and Muslims, and that actually was a year when we were studying caste systematically, so to speak. We had the whole year was about sociology of caste, and we did all the big in quotes names, Emin Srinivas Gurye, Andre Bretel, Nicholas Dirks, everyone you can think of course, but Ambedkar and Gail Omvet, and all the other people. But I don't think anyone in the class actually understood what caste is, even through the whole the whole year of studying it, because it was taught in such a distanced way. And even though I, as a person who had heard some things at home and had seen some frictions at home, was able to write an assignment about, this is how I've seen caste and Muslims, there was no feedback at all to help me drive or build on that scholarship. And instead, through many other conversations, I ended up working on secularism and communalism for 5 years, through my master's, through my bachelor's, and through 2 of my masters. And it feels to me like a wasted time, because because all the readings that were available and all the thoughts that professors heard me and spoke about were in that direction. So they kind of pushed me only in that. And it was outside. I've been in very kind of nice universities, so to speak, but it's outside of universities that I actually learned a lot. And it was on Twitter through people who had never don't have an MA, that I was directed to readings that helped me think about things years later. So I think a question we also should have for ourselves is, how do we protect ourselves from the mediocrity of mainstream spaces? And a question I constantly struggle with is how to preserve that honest search we have for something, and to not get dragged into this very righteous chambers of humanities education in India. I hope that kind of disjointed thoughts were of some use, and I'll end talking now. Thanks, Nevin.
Thank you so much, Shireen. Now let me invite Rahul. Rahul? Yeah.
I'm really sorry. There was some technical problem. And yeah, so
Please go ahead, Rahul.
Yeah, so I guess whatever I heard from Shireen, she covered a lot of points already. So I won't go into again the same detail. But yes, as topic which has given me, I guess how to navigate into Indian academia. So although this question is quite difficult for a young scholar like me, because whatever I'm going to speak, I am also going to speak for myself, because I'm still a PhD scholar and trying to understand how to navigate into Indian academia. But yes, since there are these young students, young scholars who are aspiring to be the part of Indian academia or the academia in general, so I'm going to talk, about a little about how to do it. Rather what it is. I'm going to speak up more about, how to navigate into it, because Shireen already spoke what it is and how hierarchical the field, academia is, and not just in India but across, the societies. So as we know, this is something, when we say or talk about academia, it is about hierarchy. And when I see academia as a field, then theoretically it also takes us to the Bourdieu, who very easily summarize saying, "See, boss, academia or the education for that matter is a field, and if this is a field, it requires a particular habitus, means the particular value system, particular behavior, which Shireen spoke, language, particular attitude, which produce, what Bourdieu would call, capital. So academia for a long time in India is a hierarchical field, and this hierarchical field is basically been designed with the coherence, with the upper caste, or in general, if I say middle class, so middle class in India mostly upper caste. Okay, so I come from, I studied in JNU, I studied in TIS. So except, and this is something very interesting, like, what Bourdieu again says, that education basically reproduce, it's a space of cultural reproduction. So in India, it is not just a space of cultural reproduction, but it is basically a space of, it reproduces inequality, and it does not just reproduce inequality, it also legitimizes that inequality. And Nidin wrote a very nice article on JNU, and I read, his article, and he basically also gives you the number historically, how academia is in terms of the caste-based representation. But yes, the students who are entering into academia, they need to be first clear about this, that this space is the way it has been claimed, that university or the academia is a space of a liberation, a space for your mukti or some enlightenment. First, you need to understand this is not a true. This is not true. Academia or the university as a space is a space of reproduction of inequality. It's a space of what Bourdieu again would say, the cultural reproduction. Now, my experience tells me that whether, and I studied in TIS, I studied in JNU, in society, when you go out of the university gate, you see the people who are on the street, people who are engaging in everyday activities, who basically maintains your city, or even you go to your village, people who basically maintains your village, or what we can say maintains so-called functional unity or economical unity within your city or in a village, are the people who come mostly from lower caste. Okay, including SC, whatever you say, scheduled caste, OBC, Pasmanda Muslims, all of these people who are engaging in everyday activity, who basically maintains your city, maintains your village. Now, when you come to the university, you see in the contrast, people who are not engaged in the production, they are basically the people who are in the majority in the university. So in JNU, the representation of SC, upper caste is and basically including the gender representation, the mostly more upper caste women and upper caste men are there in JNU. Again, in addition, when JNU, for example, university like JNU, which talks about gender, the very category of gender and giving deprivation point has actually helped upper caste women. And therefore, in JNU, when they say women ka jada percentage, women have more percentage in JNU, they don't tell you that these women are mostly upper caste women. So therefore, the total population of students, including faculties, is much more than the SC, ST, OBC students in the campuses, and this is a reality. Now, whether you go to another universities, more or less the same realities, except in the state universities. In the state universities, Dalit Bahujan students are much more higher in the number, because I studied in Nagpur University. I can tell you that and Nidin gave again I read the Nidin article. He gives an interesting data that how state university produce more graduates than the so-called central or the premier universities in India. So the hierarchy also goes like this, from local to what we can say national and then global. So जितना नीचे जाओगे उतना ज़्यादा SC, ST, OBC के बच्चे are getting graduate degree, but in the so-called central and the premier universities they are getting less representation, and then we have so-called global academia and all of that. So this is a case, and Shireen explained it quite well that how it works. Now for me it's also very important. For example, how to navigate. So as Shireen said, do not fall in trap of competing with the so-called existing academia. So there is this always pressure that the language, specifically those who are in social sciences or in humanities, they know it, that the academia has its own language. Basically, when I say academia has its own language, is basically the language of people who are, or let me say in a very clear tone, is basically the language of ruling caste and ruling class in India. This that you use the particular term and you use the particular language. Now there is bar is set for you. You have to be like this. And the student who go to the universities, this upper caste student, they also reproduce this. We have to write like that. They present this intellectual as if the gods, like a demigod, the Bhudevta in the universities. So first of all, working class students who come there from slums, from villages, first thing they need to understand, this language is not something that you do not know. This language is something basically has been forced that you should not know. ये तैयारी इसलिए किया गया है, आप जानो ना इस चीज को. This is a deliberate attempt to maintain or to this is how any ruling class across the world works. Like a ruling class always try to make this distinction between they and us. So if I want to prove that I am a ruling class or I am a king, I have to acquire some so-called unique capacities, some unique capabilities, which the people who are there cannot match to me. And this is how even this upper caste in academia do. They want to project themselves as if there's something unique. They have something unique, therefore we have this power. Therefore, my suggestion for these Dalit Bahujan students, do not go to into this contestation that I want to acquire this language. Those who can, they will definitely. Those Dalit Bahujan students who come from affluent family, they want to do that, they should do that. But working class students who are coming from the poor background, because I have seen the students who are suffering from this, they go into depression. And even after reading so many books, I understand book, but I cannot write like that. My articles has been rejected. Now, obviously, your article will be rejected from the so-called big journals, because they are meant to reject your article. Because the way they, the articulation that they want from you, the language they want from you is not your language they want their language. Therefore, you will be bound to, get a rejection if you want to match them, or specifically you want to use their language. The second thing, which I strongly feel, that Dalit Bahujan student or the working class student, rather, in science is very easy. If you are in science field, you don't have to, the language does not have much hold in your academic development, or what we can say, it's not a parameter. So if it's mostly your capacity of, or how do you reason the data, or theory in your discipline. It's more about data, it's more about the quantification. Therefore, for science student, it is much more easier. And I see my many of my friends who come from science background, they have done much better in their career, and they face less in terms of academic development. In the institution, obviously, they face more severe kind of discrimination, caste-based discrimination. But in terms of mobility, so their mobility is higher, academic mobility is higher than the social science students. The reason is this, because their research is mostly about the data, mostly about the objective realities, unlike in the in the social sciences or in humanities, where you basically your articulation depends upon the language. Okay, your ethnography is depend upon how you have presented it, what kind of the jargon you have used it. If it is simply saying ki maine ye dekha, maine wo dekha, and all of that, you're writing the reality. They are not going to accept it. They're going to say, hey, why didn't you use the Berkeley's understanding of caste and class? Why didn't you use the Srinivas understanding of this and that? Why didn't you read Damble for that matter? Okay, so this is going to come for you. In science, this is not a case. You simply know, okay, this is basically the theory. This is universal theory, and you go to the field. You understand the data like that. You have a laboratory, and this is how you produce. Therefore, my suggestion for working class students who go to the university, that please choose a research topic which are basically mostly oriented towards the field data, and choose a topic of quantitative, work on quantitative data. Okay, for example, the topic those who are going into economics are still interested to understand caste and all of this. Say, the global economics and caste, whatever, but use the data. Even if you are in sociology, you are in political science, start working on data. Focus more on quantitative research, and less on the qualitative research. Anyway, qualitative research, as anyway, in India, the qualitative research or across the world is nothing but the subjective understanding of all the researchers. Qualitative data anyway is what Srinivas says is a Sanskritization. If you read the caste history very closely, you would find this is not a Sanskritization, but this is basically we see the conditioned behavior of any oppressed community to mobile themselves. Okay, so there are my point is this, qualitative data at the end becomes a subjective kind of understanding, and therefore Dalit Bahujan students, working class students should mostly focus on quantitative research. Okay, produce data, because this research also has a more possibility of you get a more space to publish it in across the various journals. Then you don't have to wait for EPW or sociological bulletin for 2 through 3 years. Then some Mukherjee, some Brahman will suggest you, or ye nahi likha, wo nahi likha. Don't go into this trap. Quantitative data लो, अपना रिसर्च करो, डेटा अपना रिजल्ट प्रोड्यूस करो, और जो इंटरनेशनल जर्नल है उसमें भेजो, इंडियन जर्नल से मत भेजो, अपर रिजेक्ट करेगा, और वो दलित को भी बैठाया हुआ उसमें एज अ रेफरी, वो दलित भी उनका ही होता है, तो वो भी रिजेक्ट करेगा आपका, क्योंकि उसको अपनी दुकान चलाना है. ठीक है, सो डोंट डू दैट. माय सजेशन, डोंट डू वर्क ऑन क्वालिटेटिव डेटा. बाकी वो घर में कविता लिखो, अपने आर्टिकल लिखो, किताबें छापो अपने लोकल, इससे वो अपना करो. लेकिन when it comes, if you want to make a career in academics, then work on quantitative data. This is my suggestion, because ये हमने नहीं किया. No one, rarely, nobody, because Dalits also, or the working class people who are into academics, they also don't in that way there is no strong support in academics. You need to understand this. From the Dalit Bhojan have not created any strong support within the academics. Therefore, the students university में जा रहे हैं, so you don't have to do a revolution when you write. Just write a simple study, take a simple topic, simple study, complete your study, और publication करो, international journal में डालो, और जल्दी publish करके नौकरी लो. So yeah, this standpoint, all of these are are not going to help you. This is just good in the argument and descriptive research. Those जिनके पास already positions power है, उनके लिए standpoint, epistemology, all of these really matters. Again, I would emphasize to take a topic which are mostly contemporary reality, to like what does science do? Science invent. अभी ये नहीं हुआ, अच्छा इसको एक्सप्लेन कर सकते हैं क्या, उसको एक्सप्लेन करो. ऑल ऑफ दिस डोंट गो इनटू अगेन. एंड history, the student who are studying history, they should be also taking a topic which are quite relevant, which will give them a space. Okay, rather just fixing yourself into one particular topic or the popular topic. So that's my suggestion. I don't want to add more. This is what my experience tells me. Publication, quantitative research करो, ये जार्गन में मत फंसो, एकेडमिक लैंग्वेज में नहीं आता है तो छोड़ दो. राइट इन सिंपल लैंग्वेज व्हाट यू फाउंड एंड व्हाट इज योर एनालिसिस. या थैंक यू वेरी मच. थैंक यू नितिन.
Thank you so much, Rahul, for that frank conversation. Next, let me invite Siddhesh. Siddhesh. Yeah.
Hi,
please go ahead, Siddhesh.
Thank you for having me. And a lot has been covered by Shireen and Rahul so articulately, which I also wanted to say. But since I am from a different kind of a field, so I'll try to share those experiences. So my life as a design student did not started with the question of why design. but it started with the question of why not design. I was the financial conditions of my family were not very well. There was a lot going on, and there was this one thing that my parents, like most of the parents, were aware of, was that engineering is the only way to go through society and make your name or a position in the society. But my question of why not design did not appear in my mind, even though I've been drawing since very long time. I don't even remember when was the when I did the first drawing, and I kept on making journals and everything. I had no exposure to the sort of what we call Savarna aesthetics and everything. But since my grandfather was interested in art, he also used to doodle. He also used to scribble. We did not know that this is doodling, this is scribbling. We did not know about that jargon. But he used to draw these details that he used to find interesting. So I used to find his books interesting. When my grandfather has this very interesting story that his father left him when he was 5 years old. And his father went on to become a Ravidasya saint, and he left the family, and he was motherless child. So he was raised up by his uncles. So when he grew up, his affiliation with his father, his love for his father was very different from what we see in the movies or whatever kind of expressions that there are. So what he did was he used to call these local painters who used to do these paintings of Baba Saheb or Ravidas, and would also make these graphic design boards of these kirana stores, general stores, tailor shops and everything. And he used to ask them to make his portrait with his father. He used to tell him, explain everything, how he looks and everything. He hasn't seen him for a very long time, since 5 years of age. He has left him, he has not seen him, but he is able to imagine him. He's able to tell that painter that he's also aging with me. This is how he looks now, this is how his ears are now, this is how his nose is now. So there are a series of paintings where I see and these are very, very cheap paintings. These are not well-known artists or anything. So whenever he could save money, he would spend it there. And I see these interesting palettes with blue. There is this interesting background of nature. There is this surrealism, because he hasn't seen his father, and still his father is aging with him. When he's getting his job, his father is in a particular age. When he's he has a son, his father is in a particular age. So how this imagination is being is being carrying forward. So this was my first exposure to art. My first canvas was not a good paper or a sketch pad. My uncle used to assemble rickshaws, and we used to paint on the metal panel of the rickshaw. You cannot go wrong. So for the practice, first they will give you these waste plates, and we would practice on that, and then they will give us the main thing to do. And we are kids. This is how we started drawing. This is how we are exploring materials. We haven't used these fancy Camlin poster colors yet, and we are working with acrylic paint, which is going to stay on a metal, which is very difficult when you see afterwards as a technique or whatever. So this is how I was being brought up. But never I had this question that why not design? Why should I not take design? Because I had no idea about design. I did not know that design existed. I did not know that these universities, these colleges existed, who are claiming to be these very elite institutions, or pioneer of design in India and in Asia. So I had no idea about it. But slowly, as I grew, I went to school. Somehow, luckily, when I was in 12th standard, my father got transferred to Kanpur, and Kanpur was a big city for me, because before that we have always lived in very, very small towns, mostly in Uttarakhand. So Kanpur was like a metropolitan city for me, and there I got introduced to design and everything. And that was the first time I questioned that why should I not fill this form? Let me fill this form. Let me see what happens there. And since I was naturally inclined towards it, I was able to crack the paper. I was able to get inside the campus, which I was not aware of. I'm on my first day, I have no clue about what this college is about, or what I'm going to study. I have no clue about who are the existing designers who have excelled in their fields or anything. So I just knew that I have been practicing this, so it was very natural for me when it came to the college. First day in college, I wanted to share these stories, how I came here. So I had this curiosity of sharing the story of that how I used to paint on those metal panels, or how I first stitched leather, because leather is something that my family is still into. So my first stitching was on leather. So I wanted to share these stories. I wanted to share the story of how I made a Beyblade out of a pine seed. So but when I on the first day of college, this question came up that what caste you come from. And this question was not direct, because I was going to study in NIFT Bombay, and there is no hostel for boys, so we have to find our own accommodation. And we found a house which was nice, which was in the budget that we could afford. And the first thing that they are discussing, the four people who are going to share this apartment, is they're telling their own caste. So the person, the first person, he says that I am Gautam Kumar, but this Kumar is this Kumar means that I am a Bhumihari Brahmin. And there is this Dubey who is telling that I'm Dubey, hum do Ved pade hue aur wo Brahmins and everything. There is a Ranjan who says that Ranjan doesn't mean anything, that I come from anywhere else. I am a Bania. So this is how they did not ask your caste, but since they have told your caste, so you are obligated to tell your caste. And I lied, because I was afraid. I was in this, in this new city, this Bombay, and I wanted to make a career out of myself. I have kind of protested in my house that I want to make a career in something that I believe in. I want to do that. And I lied, and that lie remained with me, for almost 6 years, till the time in NIFT I was a Brahmin. And half of the NID, when I was doing my master's, I was a Brahmin, because I was lying. I was so much into inferiority complex. There was nothing that I wanted to, tell about my life. I would not tell, how or what my parents eat, or how they eat, or, what they do, in your festivals when we get holidays, or what are our festivals, whether there is any concept of Ambedkar Jayanti or anything like that. I could not share about, what makes me or my family joyous. So I would try to figure out for myself. Most of the time I was just a silent kid, because I cannot accept them also, because I was not brought up in that sense that I would become this mascot of of your culture, as Rahul really nicely said about reproduction of culture. And this is what was happening in the college. They were reproducing their own culture. Your culture is somewhere you feel so inferior, because none of your stories are being discussed. When you are you're studying aesthetics, they're talking about rasa and bhava. And when they're talking about rasa and bhava, they are all only talking about rasa and bhava in worshipping of Krishna or Ram. So in the poetry which is written by Mirabai towards for Krishna, or they're finding all the rasas here. All the 9 rasas are in the Hindu mythology, in this culture only. So there is no other rasa available in my community. How how will I understand? So this is how I was trained in that direction. For 7 years I was trained in the direction that design is, composition is based on these rasas and bhavas, which are innovation or discoveries of the upper caste, because that culture is only propagated. So this is how I had so much of inferiority complex that I could not even tell where I come from. I could not even tell what my stories are. And I just was trying to, I was not making sense of my existence. And because of that, my study also suffered. In few semesters I was so down at times that my study would suffer. I'm not able to do things rightly, even though I was a good student, even though I was a student who was selected and sent abroad for an exchange semester. I was getting good marks and everything, but sometimes my semesters would go very, very low, because I cannot even share my stories. And as a creative person, I am driven by emotions. Nobody empathizes with that. So we are in an institute which talks about empathy, and it talks about these things, about these very sympathetic concepts and everything, but they do not believe in that. They do not practice that with their own people. There is you do not feel comfortable, so you lie. And like me, many people lied. Many people are still lying. They are they're working in Google, they are working in Microsoft, and they are not ready to tell their caste locations because they are afraid of that it's not, they're not earning a lot. It's folly to say that we are capitalistic, or we are earning a lot. I have not seen a single scheduled caste person who is earning that much. Like, my father was in a good position in and still his batchmates, his colleagues who were in the same position had way better living standard than us, because my father had to take care of the education of his 6 brothers and sisters. He is also, because if he's an Ambedkarite, then he's thinking in that Ambedkarite direction. He feels it as a responsibility of him that he spent his money in the Ambedkarite movement. So he's he has been giving fees for so many people, and he still does. So that's why we were not able to raise to that standard. But somehow we had that freedom of thought. I still when I go to my house, I talk very very comfortably about patriarchy, about anything. Like, there is no fear of that he's elder than me, and he's the only right person. So there is something that he can learn from. That is the beauty of Ambedkarite politics, or the beauty of Ambedkarite community, that there is this exchange of thought, which is not dependent on anything. So these stories, this kind of atmosphere, I was not able to share with my friends or with my teachers or through my projects until my last my last project, which was a graduation project, which touches some bits of caste, but it doesn't explore caste. So in my education career, I never really talked about caste in my major projects. I have here and there, I've pinpoint something, sometimes something is there in my storyboard or something like that, but it was never a full-fledged project. And somehow, because of that, I was able to do well in the college. Like Rahul said, you take you do not comply to what they say, or you think about what you want to do, and you make your researches more like, it cannot be that quantitative in design, but it should be more relevant, and more, maybe more sellable, more commercial, or more practical. So that's what my approach was. That's what I was doing in my design college. When I got out of my design college, then I started unlearning these things, because now I have certificates from the elite institutions. Now I have this confidence that you cannot question my, at least my training. You cannot question my intellect in a way. You can always I still get this to reservations and everything like that, but still there is this some validation, there is some legitimization that you get when you get a degree from college. And then then came the politics in my work. Then I got introduced to, I really thought about Manevar Kashiram's concept of 80s to 20 ratio. And I thought of the same thing can be applied into design also, because when I was in the college, I was told that design industry is a glass building far away, which smells like coffee, where there are bean bags, there are comfortable chairs. This is what was portrayed to me. This is what everybody was running after designing for these 20-25% of people. And I really thought about how Manevar Kashiram talked about 80%, 80% of people. He talked about us making 80% of people, and I thought about, why do not we design for 80% of the people? There is a lot of people. There has been no design movement in India, and there will never be a design movement in India if we do not cater to these 80 to 85% of people. We are just making things, we are only designing things for these 20% of people who are inspired by the Western concept. So they have nothing to do with, what they call about Indian culture, because Indian culture is not those 20%, those 5% Brahmins, who are doing Saat Feras around Aag, or, wearing Jani. This is not Indian culture. Bindi is not Indian culture. There are so many cultures. 20% of Chamars, follow certain culture, but there is not a single film in which, a marriage has been done like it happens in a Chamar family or in a Bhangi family. You only see, one sort of perspective. So that's where I realized that, there is scope of work in designing for the 80% of people. And it took me a long time. My friends got settled, they got married, they got, got into good companies and everything. But I could not settle for this. I cannot, live those 7 years of my college life again and again and again and again. I do not want to do that. So that's why, that was the only reason that I decided that no, I'm going to do it for this. I get that, I get this a lot, that, your aesthetics are Savarna aesthetics. No, you come to my house and you see those paintings, you see my grandfather's doodles, and you will realize why my aesthetics are like that. It is them who have appropriated our aesthetics. It is, I am naturally making these line drawings because that's how I have seen the first paintings. I haven't seen, मैंने नहीं देखा था MF Hussain के वो घोड़े या फिर वो सारा काम. I had never seen those things. For me, surrealism was not that kind of surrealism. For me, surrealism was, something which is, beyond time, beyond space, something which is very creative. We Bahujan people are the real artists and the designers of this country. We do not understand that, because none of these Savarna friends of mine were, painting rickshaws or, making Beyblades out of pine trees, or binding their own books, and, creating that craft in themselves. The kind of hand that we have, they do not have. And I noticed it in NID. When I was in NID, there is this really nice infrastructure. You get lathe machine. If you have ever, sculpted wood and, with a chisel, you would be fascinated by lathe machine and you will just want to do something. I was even making my own buttons for the shirt that I was stitching in that lathe machine. And all of these Bahujan students were really mad about these things. Somebody's making chappals for their own personal use till 4 a.m. They are working. They are not getting, they're not, they do not have that communication skill that, they will get into, these big jobs. But I can challenge that, the kind of skills, the kind of thought they produce, just because they cannot communicate, it is not considered. But when they will be considered, that would be the turning point. Well, India will see a design movement or an art movement, because we have never, we always categorize, our people. They always categorize us. This is Dalit artist, this is a Adivasi artist, or they are doing this, and they just somehow they want to converge you, or they want to keep you in this shell of this thing. Me making Ambedkar, I do not see me making Dr. Ambedkar is about Dalit movement. I see it as the movement of the humanity. He was humanitarian for me first. So they do not say, I want to make Baba Saheb an icon of humanity, an icon of equality. And that could only be done when we will make more and more and more. We will, repeatedly make. This is how popular culture works. And if we will not learn from that, how a popular culture works, or how iconography or symbolism are made constant in the society, we'll not be able to do it. I want to have artists in my community who can sell Baba Saheb's or Mahatma Phule's artworks or around that subject in lakhs. Why is only Gandhi or Nehru is a subject in that matter? So why, Dr. Ambedkar's poster should be only of 100 rupees? Why should, it should have been printed in a newsprint paper or, a low GSM paper? So I want to break that, barrier, and I want my community to break that barrier. I want every student who is, in these institutions, in NIFT, in NID, to, not go through, what I went through, because I had nobody that I was, looking up to. That everything that was shown to me, the whole popular culture, the whole mainstream culture was so Savarna, centric, that I found no place for myself. So now, since our people, second generation, educated people from our community are making films, are making songs, and look at the magic that, they're creating. And I think this will help the next generation or the coming generation to not face that inferiority complex that I went through, or so many people from our community go through year by year by year. So yeah, I think I can stop at that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Siddhesh. Ravi, if there are any audience questions, we can take them as well. Thank you so much. Shireen, Rahul, and Siddhesh, I have taken quite a few notes. So I think the common question that I had for all three of you was if you all could maybe reflect some more on the political economy of higher education. Navigating, navigating higher education is one thing, or navigating these cultural spaces is one thing, but entry itself often becomes a major hurdle. So, and especially when first generationers are entering in large numbers, we also see a tendency. We also see a larger, economic order which wants you to, privatize education. And what kind of challenge would it then, put up to students from marginalized communities? So that is one question that I had. So yes, if anybody would like to take up that question.
I can talk about design institutions because they are a bit different, because the concept of design education in state owned colleges is very rare, and it is growing these days, but it is very rare. And the infrastructure is not very good, the faculties are not very good, so there are only a few colleges, a handful of colleges. You can count them in just one hand fingers. So there are so less colleges, and there is so less of opportunity elsewhere. These colleges are very expensive. Even the government owned colleges are very expensive. They have since I have left colleges, my college, the fees has gone threefold or fourfold. So if I think of it that I have taken loan for all my, I am still giving my loan back, but I was thinking that I would not have been able to afford if I were to get into these same colleges now. And what private colleges in design are as expensive as as a degree in medical science. So it is very, very expensive. It is impossible for our people to study in those places. So we have no place to go. There is only one thing, that we can go to bank and get into these institutions, because without bank, I don't think that we will be able to afford that high fees. But I think government should, what they are doing in the sense of privatization, I think they should do something which is reverse, because in this place of education, there is no they have not considered class and what caste and what, and if as I said that if we want to really make a design movement, we'll have to have more Bahujans or Dalits and Adivasis into this, and to have more of them in these institutions, we'll have to have more government institutions. These colleges are very expensive because maybe maintaining that infrastructure is expensive. Maybe maintaining those libraries, those books, and those machinery and everything is also very expensive. But I think government should do something about it. Otherwise, there is no place for us in design industry in future.
Rahul and Shireen, would you all like to maybe reflect something on?
Yeah. So my focus is one, briefly, as we know that now education is getting privatized, and surprisingly, even the so-called social science education, which government, for that matter, or people in general never give more significance. That is also getting privatized in the name of liberal arts in various private institutions. So what is the solution then? One is that our people demand that the SC/ST students or the students should get reservation in the private institute. But then this is about a government, this is about a movement, this is about, making a noise around. But in the absence of all of this, how to how can we still navigate into all? My emphasize still, and the suggestion for the Buddhist student is that that they should go for more these skill-based courses rather than this this non-skill and this PhD tak padna and all of that. You do it once you get, have a money and all that. This social science education in any way is not going to give you, it's not, does not help you to survive. So therefore, like at all, if you are studying, you have some scope to study, then take up the courses which are, which provides you some skills. Okay, some and because even you take a loan, if you take a loan for liberal arts, you won't get a job. How you will repay the loan, right? So therefore, and this is maybe this is not a choice anymore. Maybe, but yes, I think if you want to navigate into academics, then this is something very important. I believe skill-based courses we should learn, and one very important, I think that is something which is not possible to do. That is the Bahuje community, and the people who are active, in civil society also, that, now this is the time that we do not just simply speak or spend money when there is a caste atrocity on that. Right? So, because even the civil society that Dalit Bahujan society has, whatever civil society we have, even in diaspora, they generally spend money on some individual or when some atrocity happens and all of that. Now the focus should also to create this autonomous institution. See, I come from an area where I can take you 20 schools which have been built by the People's Education Society after Ambedkar, including Jaibai Chaudhary School for Dalit women. I studied in Panchashil High School, which was a trust by Dalit Buddhist community. So we, in that way, in my school, I never faced discrimination. Because we were quite dominant in the school, because and the school was basically meant to give education to slum students. The Brahmins were not coming and building a school in my area. It's mostly my people who came. But now that has been stopped completely. This new generation, which is basically, has taken a benefit of a reservation. Either they just talk about the caste atrocities or they talk about their personal subjective experiences. They do not talk about building this autonomous institution. So I believe building this autonomous institution is very, very important. See, the one reason which I see the Muslim could survive successfully, if not as a completely ruling class, but as a community, because in the Muslim culture, if you read the history very carefully, the idea of madrasa was very strong. Now the madrasa is also the kind of an obstacle for Paspana Muslim mostly, because they are the one who are studying in madrasa, and the upper caste Muslim are mostly studying in Christian missionary education schools and their own English medium schools. But if you see as a history, as this autonomous institution has played very important role. And therefore, I believe that now this should be a focus for our, educated people who are earning, not just this simply celebration. And, the celebration now should also be around autonomous institutions.
Yeah. Thank you, Rahul. Shireen, would you like to respond to this question?
I'm not sure I have like a lot to add, but I totally understand when Rahul said that don't even go for skill-based courses and don't go for humanities education. And I am finding myself increasingly telling young people, like at a certain age, I would have never advised people to go for, those courses. But considering even the job market in media and academia, both, I also have started telling a lot of people to think about whether they want to do a skill-based course first. But at the same time, it's a very, very weird position to be in, because when you are in these spaces, you see that the people who are in good positions in media and academia, their work is so basic. Like you realize how little it also takes to be good and excel in it. And so you do want to push people, saying that, it is possible. Like, it's not, because a lot of people who like, so for example, contact me about applying, and they think you have to be really good to get an application abroad. But when you actually see the research that happens, you want to tell people that it's actually not very difficult, and the people who who end up making their who end up getting their research accepted are just able to like do a few like basically they're able to gamify it well. They're able to hit all the dots. So there is a dilemma in like wanting to really encourage people to go for it, because they can make it, considering the quality of education everywhere. But yeah, but it's a very weird kind of space to be in. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you,
maybe
Shireen.
I want to add one more point what Shireen said.
Yes.
See, yeah, as I said, those Dalit Bhojam students who are in academics, like mostly coming from some affluent family, see, they can do that, and they should do it. For example, what you're saying that how these upper castes are shallow in their understanding, creating this all false narrative in the name of ethnography on all this. Okay, but they didn't do it. They also get into trap of writing their autobiography. This is a sad thing. You go to Cambridge, you go to Harvard and write autobiography. This is not something which I expect that the Dalit Bhojam students should be doing. They should, rather they should be, producing critic of Spivak that, can subaltern speak, subaltern are speaking, they are the one who are resisting. The one who is not resisting or speaking against the state or against the power is the Brahmin, the ruling class. Brahmin in India has a history of always going with the power. It's a lower caste who are speaking against the power all the time. So the subaltern cannot speak. They have a rich history of speaking, dancing, producing music, producing art, producing everything, not just consuming. So my point is this, but I don't see the bigger the meta narrative which is coming from Dalit Bhojam students who are in these premier institutes. They also end up writing their autobiography or subject or their own experience. I'm not saying that they should not do that. But when they're in this big premier institution, they should be producing some example of writing. Again, which the one point I missed. In academics, specifically in social sciences, this binary of theoretical Brahmin and empirical Shudra has been taken very seriously by even Dalit Bhojam scholars. Okay, so what do they do then? So when it comes to Dalit Bhojam student, he finds or she finds comfort in subjective experiences of understanding or even writing their own research or their own whatever the publication they do. I believe this had some importance, but now but this has also caged a Dalit Bhojam scholar in rewriting the theory, okay, or producing theory for a Dalit Bhojam community. Okay, so they have fixed themselves into this standpoint, epistemology, and subjective experiences, and also now what's popularly known as this intersectionality. They should go beyond this. They should become the independent researcher, independent theorists who can theorize not just their own experiences, but the reality in general, right? And it's very interesting also to add this thing to when you read Ambedkar's Caste in India, which was MA paper, or even Annihilation of Caste and some of his other writings, the way he writes, he doesn't just simply write as someone who can say the insider, the very long-standing debate within the ethnography, the insider outsider. He's not someone who always writes as an insider. He's someone who writes as a scholar, taking the less support of subjective experiences and more the objective evidences which are there. So I believe the academia, has successfully produced this binary of theoretical Brahmin and empirical Shudra, and have caged Dalit Bhojam scholar into this, pathetic, this lust of just talking about experiences and subjective reality. Yeah, Nidin.
Rahul, the panelists, we have two more questions. So I'm sure you can see the questions. The first one from the audience is academia and cultural spaces is one thing. How do we navigate interpersonal relationships or intimate relationship when it comes to non-caste alike partner or friends? So here the subject, the audience wants to know, the one who is raising the question wants to know, what do we do about interpersonal relationships in academic spaces beyond research or beyond questions of what kind of skill that we need to acquire. Yeah, so that is one question. The second question is, and I think the second question has been answered to a certain extent, as Bahujans, what should our primary focus be as a community and individual to build social capital? I think your response in terms of autonomous institutions or other forms of collective actions are of course ways of building social capital as well. I'm sure there will be more things to add. So yeah, the question is about interpersonal relationships and intimate relationships in academic spaces.
Yeah. So who
Yeah,
answers?
anyone can go. I mean, Shireen, Gautam, Rahul.
Siddhesh.
Okay, I'll try to answer this. Like, for me, my interpersonal relationships are very much dependent on the politics. I do not believe in the story of Krishna and Sudama. So I do not really like, how can I be friends with somebody who does not understand, where I come from or what I do, or, what kind of a person I am. I do not really try to make any effort in mending these relationships, because I believe that there is a lot more work that I need to do, rather than wasting my time in converting one person to be friends with me. I am not in that position anymore, that I want you to become my friend, and I want to change your politics. I'll give you personal time, and we'll talk. I am not interested in that. I do not have time for that. I really believe that life is very, very short. There are so many things that that we as individuals want to achieve, we as community want to achieve. And uh, I personally do not think that that it, and somehow it hasn't hindered my work in that way. I never expected that people will take my work seriously. I never expected that people would people especially from from not my own community would not would think about my work more seriously. And I do not expect anything from them anyways. So I'm not here to to make these interpersonal relations. I do not have time for that. I do not have that privilege to do that. So that is my take on it.
No,
Shireen,
are you?
Rahul. Yeah, Rahul.
Yeah. What is basically the exact question in this interpersonal relationship with whom? With
Interpersonal relationships with those who don't belong to your caste or community. So in academic spaces, we do get into such relationships. So the person wants to know, how do we navigate those relationships?
Okay. No, see, I don't know, like how to navigate, because most of the any relationship with happens when you or can retain when you find some common expression, in your emotional expression or whatever. तभी तो टिकता है तो relationship. Now I'm not expert, but even you are a friend with an upper caste guy or girl, you are a friend till you do not have a difference. Now I know one story of my friend. He he was a good friend of this upper caste guy. They used to roam together in the campus. And then suddenly I see after 2 months, after entering college, after 2 months, they are no more friends. Now, they don't even talk to each other. The reason is they had a debate on reservation. And this guy, spoke against reservation, calling him. And he was angry. Upper caste guy was angry on the Dalit guy. That, SRS, all of that. So, but then he says, but as a friend, you should have understood my emotions, my feelings, and all of that. Now, therefore, the reason is this, for this whatever interpersonal relationship, whether with girl or boy, or basically also depends upon, how do you understand each other. And that is something also very personal, now no one can say that कि किसके साथ तुम दोस्ती बनाओ, किसके साथ दोस्ती मत बनाओ, किसके साथ relationship बनाओ, किसके साथ नहीं बनाओ. But I think mostly in the campuses, in Indian campuses, I see when I say this reproduction of social inequality. So social inequality also works with the social network and therefore social relationship. In campuses, you see, even do you see the this kind of invisibilized ghettos are there? Why I'm saying invisibilized ghettos? Because when you go out, you see the visible ghettos. Here, the invisibilized ghettos, you see upper class in their own kind of and and you also deal with people who are with same ideology, right? So, university is not a space we generally been projected as something as diverse. If you read about JNU, there have been some writing on JNU. The JNU scholars, upper class scholars, have written that how it is a, basically a island of equality, the island of diversity. But when you enter, you do not see the diversity in terms of everyday life. You still have a ghettos of ideology, you have a ghettos of class, caste, and gender also. Within gender also, you have a feminist, upper caste women who are acquiring space, and you rarely see Dalit Bojan women are into public spaces. Those who are in public spaces are mostly Dalit Bojan women actually, who are making their own space and with lot of effort, not very easily, but with lot of effort. But the already established space is marked space. Therefore, there is very less scope of having relationship beyond the borders. Those who has it, yes, they have to struggle, because if they have to, some has to compromise, some has to basically work very hard to retain that kind of relationship. So it's not an easy task. So yeah, retaining or having relationship beyond the border. I'm using the border words very consciously here because there is a border. This invisible border is there. So to have to retain that kind of relationship, it is a struggle altogether. It takes a lot.
Shireen, would you like to? Yeah, yes.
Yeah, not exactly responding to the question, but I just wanted to give a glimpse of how this works in international campuses. So, just seeing how elite students stick together in a place like Oxford, like it's like the first conversation I was subjected to the night I reached Oxford was whether a debate between whether Ashoka is more elite or Jindal, and it's just the world is so it is so small in their heads, of talking things about things like how everyone is from the same Delhi school, and things like this seem very normal or quirky or cute to be said to each other or to students, outside India, that this is who we are, this is how our friend circle is. But there is a certain in international spaces, there is certain performance of wokeness also going on with respect to caste, which is, I'm sure, palpable in some pockets of Indian universities also. And I think those who are privileged enough to be kind of, get the, how do I say it, like get the roshni of these few benevolent guilt, people running up a guilt full upper caste running with some performative wokeness. I think it's important to also know how to make use of it, because many people like this are in positions of power. And for example, like the way five of us were able to organize the Counting Caste conference in Oxford was through kind of just spotting who are like people who will not say no to some things, and just knowing how to kind of play that to then kind of make use of our what we want to do with it. So of course that this is a very small kind of segment of people, and you need like a lot of privilege to even like to even feel that kind of this kind of performance from people. But there are spaces, especially right now in international academia, there's a lot of need to show that to talk about caste, or to kind of have token representation. And it is those small spaces open up some sort of way to navigate those things, and how you use that space to then do something more. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much for your responses to the questions, and thank you for this wonderful session. I think all the three speakers spoke about how higher education and cultural spaces are contradictory spaces. And from my own reading of higher education, I understand that it is also a dialectical space where many collective claims of the marginalized communities, sooner or later, higher education had to distill, and, through processes of distilling and filtering, yet they had to, succumb to certain demands, and that is a process that is ongoing, though we are facing many challenges. So there is a lot of value in thinking of these spaces as dialectical spaces, especially, as Rahul pointed out, in state universities where the majority of Dalit Bahujan minority students study and get their degrees. And that is also one of the reasons why state universities are now marginalized, especially in state allocation of funds. And it is largely concentrated to institutes of national importance. All the three speakers highlighted those contradictions. And also, as Rahul mentioned, maybe the way to go is to focus on immediate questions, on skills which are crucial to answer the questions around us, because very strategically, there is a division of academic labor that we see in these spaces where Dalit Bahujan students or students from any background which the upper caste may find exotic are pushed, are in a way limited to standpoint epistemology or certain crude ways of sharing experiences, but not beyond that. So there is a need to see through this strategy and focus on topics which actually are important and relevant to our everyday fights. And that, I think, is a point that can be seen as how to navigate academic spaces today. Thank you so much. And I will officially end the session now. It was a wonderful session. Thank you. You can take forward.
Would request all the panelists to, like, it's very mundane and banal, but would request all of you to turn your camera on for a second. Okay, we are not physically together, so we can digitally at least take a photo for the thing. Just hold on, let me try and. All right, let me just take a picture. All right, I think I got that. Just 1 second before I can conclude this. All right, thank you so much. This was an incredible panel, and I think it was amazing for all of us to kind of sit through it and learn so much. And I think, like, there are a lot of important points have been raised. I think Rahul Bhai was talking about, this sort of binary between the theoretical Brahman and the empirical Shudra. And I think that's a fantastic quotable quote. And it really does tie into the fact that there is a hierarchy जो एक बनती जा रही है, which is right there. You see different tiers of colleges, right from the school level, actually Zilla Parishad schools and IB schools, and that same inequality is getting recreated at the college levels, and in terms of even academic production of knowledge, like journals and publications and so on and so forth. And even Shireen was talking about her own college experiences, and I think there's another very lovely quotable quote where she was talking about how, you know, teachers are coming with Fab India aesthetics and talking about poverty, and like you can't even ask them like, how do you look so good, you know, which is actually an experience. Like, you know, you go to college spaces, and I remember my experiences in JU, you know, these people look effortlessly cool, and you know, it makes you feel small as a person ki kahan se aa gaye hain hum, and all of that. But somewhere in all of these there are inequalities which are kind of built in. And I think Siddhesh was also talking about like how art education is basically reproducing their art and for their market, right? So I think, you know, we are all having these conversations towards the creation of new spaces. Rahul bhai spoke about this history of building institutions, and I think that is really the task of the hour, which all of us are kind of building towards also. And later today, we have this panel where 9 different grassroots organizations are coming out, who are all so far, by the way, a lot of our work overlaps, but you know, trying to kind of create these spaces, even in knowledge production, academic journals, when we talk about, or even going abroad, international education, those experiences. I think these are really the spaces where one needs to थोड़ा दिमाग लगाना पड़ता है इस पे, I think, and थोड़ा हमको इस पे बात करनी जरूरी है, because a lot of our young audiences जो हैं, हमारे जो younger researchers हैं, scholars हैं, जो अभी क्लास 12 वगैरह में है, बैचलर्स में है, अभी सबकी एक मंशा है, सबकी एक एस्पिरेशन है कि वो फॉरेन जाएं, रिसर्च करें. Now this is becoming very present, मतलब अब ये जाग गया है, right? So we have to kind of create some of these pathways and conversations. So I think in that way, ये जो panel था, so was very amazing, and I think we are all grateful that, you know, all of you gave your time and spoke so beautifully. And we'll take a break right now, and after the break, you know, taking from this onwards, we are going to speak to some of our younger scholars जो अभी हाल फिलहाल में फॉरेन गए हैं, you know, because for a lot of young people, going abroad is a kind of a dream and aspiration, and to, like, you know, what are their actual struggles, experiences, and you know, what are they making out of it, is something that we will speak, we'll sort of address after the break. But अभी के लिए यहीं पर करते हैं. हम थोड़ा टाइम ऊपर ले चुके हैं. पैनलिस्ट, आपका भी लंच का टाइम हो गया होगा. प्लीज हैव अ गुड संडे मील. थैंक यू फॉर योर टाइम. And our audiences, we'll see you all after the break at 2 p.m. All right. Thank you, everybody. See you. Jai Bhim.
Thank you, Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim. Thank you.
Thank you.